everybody, welcome to another video task. This one's all about documenting your process like a real designer. Here we have a character design project by a former student. Oh, she's still a student. This is a beautiful document that I'm just going to show you as a way of demonstrating just the format that animation projects are generally delivered in. The industry standard is an A3 document ready for print with good quality images organized in a way that articulates a clear design rationale. So the problem we're trying to solve is, what do we do with our raw material? What do we do with our pages and pages of drawings? How do we take these drawings and put them into a unified document in a way that respects our assets? When I was a young man, I worked in a lot of commercial kitchens, and the chefs used to very severely say things like, "You must always respect the food." I never really understood what that meant, but I think now I know what it meant. I think it meant that, let's say you've got a nice, beautiful piece of meat. Someone has died for that piece of meat to arrive in your kitchen. Someone has given up their flesh, and we can honor them by making sure that piece of produce arrives on someone's plate in really good quality and is enjoyed by them and eaten. And so in the kitchen, you respect your food by first of all not letting it go off. Second of all, making sure you don't burn it or spoil it while you're cooking. And third of all, presenting it to the customer in a way that makes them want to eat it. In the animation world, we have a similar principle, but I like to just call it respecting your assets. Assets is a common word in animation. It might be a 3D model. It might be a clip of performance animation. But in our instance, what we're talking about when we talk about assets is about a drawing. So respecting your drawings might be a different way to put it. We're going to start the process today by setting up a document that we're going to build upon over the course of the semester. So let's go to Adobe InDesign, a layout tool, and create a new file, A3, landscape format, 10 pages, maybe 30, I don't know. And we're going to add a 5mm bleed all the way around by clicking on that little link there. And turn facing pages off. Okay, there we go. Think about this blank document as your future slideshow, perhaps, or your future A3 PDF. So the easiest way to do this is to just start by placing your images onto the document. So let's say we had this image here and we wanted to place it into InDesign. Perhaps the first thing we would want to do is do a little bit of color correction. In the past, I've shown you how to do color correction by using the curves. That is a full commitment color correction, but there's another way to do it which is a little bit more flexible and reversible. You can select a layer and you can add an adjustment layer. All sorts of different adjustments, but the one we're using is the same curves tool. You could use levels, you could use hue or saturation if you wanted to make that kind of adjustment. And this is just a way of bumping the paper out. So the powerful thing about adjustment layers is you can turn them on and off. And you can add multiple adjustment layers and turn them on and off. And that allows you to have an original scan or an asset that hasn't been sort of mangled by your Photoshop process. Let's keep a layered Photoshop file, but we will also save a JPEG because maybe we want a smaller version of this to work with. No, don't compress your JPEGs too much because that is another way of disrespecting your assets. No lower than 9 quality seems to work for me. Okay, let's flick back to InDesign. We've got our page here. Go to File, Place, and we find that example that we just created. There it is, example 12. And we can just drag it out onto the page. And that's pretty much the simplest way to begin the documentation of your drawings. And that's actually the most efficient way, is to have a nice layout of sketchbook pages that are just placed onto these A3 slides. Now, what if you don't have that? What if what you got is this, a bunch of stuff you don't like and one good drawing? Or let's say you've got another one which is a bunch of stuff you don't like and one good drawing. First, we'll use Photoshop as a way of isolating these drawings and then exporting a single asset. So let's have a go at that. Let's say we've got this drawing. Let's cut her away. Let's get rid of all the other stuff, and let's place her back in there. Let's say we've got this drawing. Let's cut this character away and place this character in. Now, the one on the left has already been color corrected. The one on the right has not. So we can't really use an adjustment layer, because that will affect all of the things underneath it. So in this case, it's a reasonable situation to just do it the old 1990s Photoshop way. Especially if we save the original scans separately. Okay, so we've got two drawings on two separate layers. Here, I'm going to show you now something that you must not do. This is what I see people doing all the time with Photoshop. First of all, they might start with a shonky resolution scan, and then they make it even shonkier by doing this. That you go image, no, you edit, free transform. Yeah, you know what? I might make this smaller. Every time you do a transform, you're resampling the image. You know what? I want to spin this around and make it smaller. You know what? I want to stretch it up a bit. Please don't stretch your images. You know, I want to make it like that. And actually, you know what? I want to make it really small this time. Okay, now, actually, I want it back how it originally was. Maybe I should just put it back how it originally was. Okay. That's sort of how it originally was. Looks a bit weirder. So for me, when I see people doing this, or I see images that are affected by this, I imagine someone in a kitchen burning a steak, a beautiful steak getting burned, or somebody leaving a lovely bowl of custard out in the sun to curdle. And the way this is a lossy practice. And the way we can identify a lossy practice is that the image will start to degrade. And that becomes very apparent when we start to move in. If you printed this, it would look awful. It looks okay on the screen, but if you the way we identify the difference, so look at the lines on this hand here. Now look at the lines in the image that hasn't been mangled. Big difference. So that is the kind of care we need to respect our assets. So let's go Apple Z, Apple Z, Apple Z, Apple Z, and return to our original one. Just zoom in and check. Yep, that looks pretty good. There's a thing you can do in Photoshop called, you can work with smart objects, which is a way of manipulating a layer in a way that is not lossy. So let's go right click on the layer and convert it to a smart object. Right click on the other layer and convert it to a smart object. And now our layers, when we transform, you'll notice that there's a cross in the middle, and that is a signal that you're working with a smart layer. And that is a layer that cannot be, you can do whatever you want to it, and Photoshop will have saved the original asset in the background. And if you want to go modify that asset, you can do that as well. So maybe you want to, maybe you would like to do something like make a big layout of drawings, like this, You know, let's say you might put 20 or 30 drawings on a page, and then export that as a single image, and then go and place that into InDesign in the same way that you did with this sketchbook page. So that would be a way of doing layout in Photoshop. And the benefits of that is that you can manipulate the images as a single image. For example, let's say you wanted a pink paper texture, for example, or you wanted to, you could do something like, it's never the pink you want, is it? That's a bit closer to the pink that I want. And you might want to flatten all these layers, put a multiply on it, and then suddenly you've got your things working on what appears to be like pencil drawings on pink paper. I wouldn't go too over the top with this sort of thing, especially with weird textures and, you know, visual chaos. But that would be a use case for you doing layout in Photoshop. So the other example is doing layout in InDesign, where let's say we have our images saved separately. Oops. Let's say we have our images saved separately, like an image like that and an image like that. We might just go into InDesign and go File, Place, and then where is it? Where are they? That's one, that's another one. And then we could just place them in the document like so. And again, InDesign works a little bit like Smart Objects in that it saves a link rather than resampling the image every time you make a layout adjustment. So it's a lossless, all the layout tools in InDesign are lossless. And if you want to go and change the asset itself, you can right click on the asset and explore, edit the original with, say, Photoshop. And then when you save it in Photoshop, it'll automatically be updated in InDesign. So just one thing I actually would like to show you with InDesign is, if you go to Window and open this Info window, it looks something like this thing down here. And that's a really good tool for diagnosing the resolution of your images once they've been laid out. So if you imagine this is an A3 page, InDesign can tell you what that image will look like when it's printed on that A3 page. So just make sure you're on a selection tool, and then click on the image itself, and down here it'll tell you the effective PPI, which here is 1200, which is obscene. It's too much. The minimum is 300 for a print project. You can go much lower if it's just a screen project. So just a little checklist for respecting your assets. Have you got a good scan to start with? Have you done the cleaning up and color correcting in a way that is delicate and respects the original drawing? And have you taken the care to make sure? Have you given each image the space it needs in the layout? Remember, everything is a shape, everything is a silhouette. Make sure those shapes and silhouettes are clear. Do you need a label for the image? Perhaps that image is important. Perhaps that image is someone else's and you want to signal that this one wasn't your own. Is the page layout of drawings, is the layout of drawings useful or important? In which case, don't mess with it. Just throw it straight into the layout document. Why is this image important? You may want to explain why an individual drawing is powerful or meaningful to you. Maybe it's a breakthrough moment, and that would be an appropriate thing to include in your layout. So just to recap, Photoshop is a tool that works with pixels or raster images, and it's possible to compose a layout in Photoshop, and And what you should come out with is a single asset, a single exported A3 image that you can just throw onto to a layout document. InDesign is a different kind of thing. It works with many assets, and it's a good way of aggregating a lot of different assets. For example, InDesign will be very useful for a layout like this, where you're consolidating a bunch of different images into one cohesive layout. That's all I've got for you for this video, goons. Thanks for watching. I want you to get started in documenting your process for your disguises iterations and process material as you work through the assignment, and also your observational drawing portfolio. I'll leave you today with just a flick through somebody else's observational drawing portfolio. Here we have a portfolio by Eugene Kim. She started off not quite respecting her assets, but as we go through, we see she brought a lot of interesting stuff together into a single document. And in general, her respect for her drawings is very, very careful and very delicate. All right, have at it then. Goodbye.